Hey everybody, Doug here from 2 Plus Stuff, hanging out on this glorious Friday. Sorry I got a little bit of a late start today. I actually had a doctor's appointment this morning. But here we are, and we're hanging out. To try to do it so right now it's noon my time, and I try to do it about 11. But, here we are. We got 16 people joining us. And as always, I want to start off by asking if you can see and hear me okay. And then we'll jump in basically to the show. And as you guys know, basically the way I do these WYR reforging things on Fridays is start off talking about hobby progress that I've been working on so everyone can see kind of what I've been doing. And then we'll talk about some news that's coming out from GW. And then we always have a main topic. And so today's main topic is going to be polishing your favorite turd. And we're going to talk about what brought me to have this as a topic, because it's been a really good week for me, just in general. But I had some cool new ideas, so I wanted to talk about it. So, looks and sounds good. Thank you so much, Betsy. So here we are. And actually, we're going to jump straight into hobby progress, which is, boom, right there. Let me get these books out of the way. That's for a thing later. As far as progress goes for me, really what I've been working on is my Sisters of Battle to complement my Grey Knights. And so we have 2 mortifiers here. These are the, for a super brief lore explanation, basically if you're a Sister of Battle and you either screw up real bad or you're the last person left on your unit, you get thrown into what's called the Repentia, meaning you basically become an unarmed zealot, lightly armed zealot, earning the chance for redemption in the church's eyes. And so that's kind of a neat, this is like your last chance kind of deal before you're done. And so that's what I have here. I have 2 units of Repentia. And basically what they do is they're Sisters of Battle. They take off the power armor, give you this massive chain sword here, and they say just go earn your redemption. And so they are the crazed zealots just running forward, dying in droves, but they are melee monsters, and that's just so cool. Got a few heroes here that I was building. I think I built some of them on stream. We have Saint Celestine, the angel lady, here, along with her bodyguards up there. And then these guys are called mortifiers, which is basically next level Repentia, where, if you don't take the opportunity to try and redeem yourself in the Emperor's eyes, they strap you to this machine that makes you go insane with rage and then basically unleash you upon the enemy. And it's like feeding images of like self-loathing into your brain, and so you think you're cutting up parts of yourself, but actually it's the enemy. It's a dreadnought, but plus metal, right? Like kind of metal. So that's what I have built so far. The last unit that I own that I haven't built yet is just a normal box of Sisters of Battle, just the most plain ones. And I'm kind of deciding how I want to paint them. So yeah, I don't know. I do definitely want to model them after one of the major orders. But I haven't decided which one. I keep going between like 3. Ebon Chalice, Our Martyr Lady, and the Bloody Rose, the red ones. So anyway, I've kind of just been in build mode until I can really decide what I want. Because obviously, the paint scheme that you choose will really go a long way if you choose the right primer to go with it. In terms of like, are they predominantly black armored, or one of them has like a white, like a bone color armor. And of course, Bloody Rose is just red. So like trying to lock that down a little bit. Yeah, and that's pretty much all I've been building. Other than that, just clearing off projects, the hobby desk, to prepare for what we're going to talk about in the news. So let's move that way. So we're going to go and do the share screen. Hey everybody. All right, so here we are talking about the Lumineth Realm Lords. Now, the last time, oh hi everybody. Let me just check the comments here real quick before we jump into the looks and sounds good. Awesome, thank you so much. Yes, the Stormcast range finds like 5 things. Working on 2 Monster Apocalypse monsters. That's awesome. I have yet to see anyone actually playing that game, like in the wild. But it looks so entertaining. I've been told that I would really like table setup. Like, if you don't know, in Monster Apocalypse, you also are constructing the table with your opponent. You're building the city that you're going to be smashing through. And I've been told that there's aspects of that I would really like by friends. Let's see. Good evening, Mordian. Hey, buddy. Thank you so much for joining and supporting. So Doug found flagellants in 40k. Yes, that's guilty. What's cool is that the Repentia, like, it doesn't actually matter how I paint them. They're not part of the discussion simply because every order has Repentia and they're stripped of all their colors because they're not honorable enough to wear them. So it's just a matter of, like, I mean, I could paint what I own right now. I could paint however I want, basically. It's just trying to figure out what I want to do. So let's see, morning and evening. Apocalyptic Moth. Okay, sweet. So we got the rock stars in here today. What's a good primer for Astral Templar Stormcat? Astral Templar. Those are the kind of maroon one, right? Astral. Yeah. Does anyone have a good answer? It almost looks like if you could find a spray color of Screamer Pink, you'd be in the money, but I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a very specific one. When I did my Celestial Vindicators, which is the teal version, I primed them blue. So you might go for a warm color, like a brown or a red, something like that. If someone has a good idea, let me know. That's definitely what I would say. Okay, so on to the news that I wanted to talk about. Pre-order today, Lumineth and the White Dwarf. So, when I spoke last week, I was like, I don't think I'm going to get the Lumineth. In fact, I basically came to the conclusion that I was going to do a Maw Tribes army. And that's kind of what I was kind of set on and that kind of stuff. And I had a few people reach out to me very generously and be like, hey, if you want to get started in Maw Tribes, I have a deal for you, basically. It was very kind. However, when this went live for pre-order, I don't know. I sat there and I looked at it, and I was thinking to myself, like, do I want to get this army? I don't know. And then my buddy Jack from Rolling Ones reminded me to it that I had mentioned, like, you know, I tell people all the time, if you have any interest in this faction, when they do these big pre-release things, you should absolutely do it. You should buy into it, because if there's a chance that you might want it, you're going to kick yourself later if you didn't get it. And so I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? That's a good point. That I've this entire journey of seeing the elves, seeing the models, people's reaction, the rules leaks that we got. It's like I'm really am so like one leg into this army already that I can totally see the book coming out and then regretting not grabbing some of the stuff. And this is in sharp contrast to something like Ossiarch Bone Reapers, where I was into one paint scheme, and then I just kind of had to think, and then I saw my buddy Brent, also from Early Ones, was really into it, and so I was like, you know what, he should have it, because I'm not. But this one I was. Honestly, once they said that everyone's a wizard, I was like, whoa. Hold on a second. I actually just woke up from a minor nap between my doctor's appointment and this, so coffee injection is required. So, I did pre-order the box. I just got one. I heard of some guy who got 3. I'm just like, bleh. I don't know why. We did say last week, though, that they put an article up basically very clearly saying, like, hey, this box is going to drop, but I'm assuming because of COVID, their entire year cycle is kind of crazy. And I think they wanted to keep the release of 40k at a very fixed point. And they're like, okay, so Lumineth Realm Lords, we have this box. It's in stock. Let's pre-order and sell it. But the rest of the releases, which is probably going to be like 3 weeks worth of stuff, all the different units coming out. I'm sorry, I was reading a comment. Sorry, that's probably going to come out later in the year with no exact date. So I'm going to get them. I'm going to read the book, And I'm just going to digest the lore and figure out how I want to build the army, which is good. I mean, it's good that I don't just impulse buy whatever looks cool. I was having a great conversation with the Rerolling One guys about different ways of doing the bull helmet guys. Because I want the standard bearer to have the big bull helmet like you see in this picture to the right over here. But I don't want every guy to have that because it's too big for my tastes. So we're kind of playing around with different options of what might look cool for that. Different head options, that kind of stuff. So I just want to keep people in the loop that I did. I did pre-order the Lumineth. Very excited for them. The cavalry look amazing. If you guys didn't read the rules preview, which I think we went through. I think we went through that last week. Someone correct me if we didn't. And you get spell cards and stuff like that. And there is a battle report featuring them in this coming White Dwarf, which usually I have my White Dwarf by now. Maybe I need to re-up my subscription. I don't know. Dark Eldar Reaver head replacement specifically. Yeah, I've been thinking about that one. There's a few. I have a whole tab of like possible head options. So that's basically honestly it for AOS news. They really wanted to keep this space. I think, like I said, they really wanted to fix a point to make sure that their summer release is not ruined by COVID, and so they're really focusing on 40k right now, of course, which is fine. You know, we had our several weeks in the sun. Let's see. What color scheme will you run? Burnt orange. The Texas. No, I'm actually, I really was having this discussion. Like, this looks so much better than anything that's up here, where they had a lot more blue. Like, a big injection of color does go a long way. I've actually been thinking about black and red, black armor, red robes. I've been thinking about blue and silver, so his armor's white, but going for a really high silver. I don't know. I want to see what the book has as far as suggestion, or what do you call it? Whatever their equivalent to Stormhost is going to be, lines of thought or reason is probably what it's called. And someone asked if there was Duncan in here. No, it's Starbucks. Yeah, so, okay, sweet. So folks want to move on, we'll move on from there. But that was the only AOS news that I had, really. And I haven't been commenting a ton on 40k because now we're past the point where they're talking about broad strokes for the 9th edition, for the most part. And they're now talking about the faction-specific things, and honestly, I don't know enough about all the factions for that to be a meaningful thing to talk about. But I wanted to stick to a few that do interest me. And I have one here that I just wanted to ask a question to y'all. So, with the ones that do interest me, they have a new Psychic Awakening book. Psychic Awakening is their ongoing campaign where they've been injecting new rules into the game as supplements, and then they're all technically optional, just that a lot of their rules are really good. And they already confirmed that they are going to be... I think this was sort of our rules transition for codexes to take us from 8th to 9th edition. And so they've just been kind of codifying what they want armies to look like and that kind of thing. I'm totally cool with it. Well, I've had zero interest in any of these books until this one got announced, and that is Pariah. Now, the reason that Pariah interests me is actually... Or did I just pull up the wrong article like a dingus? I did. Hold on a second. Give me 1 second. Just look at my beautiful face, and we will figure this out. Let's see. Lords and Dominus. Where are they at? Sorry about this. I'm trying to find the article I was looking for. Ah. Okay. Sorry about that. Pariah Inquisition rules. So basically, I want to have an Inquisition army. That is like basically in AOS or in Fantasy Battles, they have like witch hunters who would go around and make sure everyone's, on the level with their faith. Everyone's kind of a heretic, holds everyone at arm's reach. And I really wanted to be able to build an army centered around that theme, which is why I went with the Grey Knights. because they have some Inquisitors in there kind of thing. But then also Sisters of Battle, having a strong emphasis on faith, purity, fighting specifically heretical stuff. That's the narrative link that brings those two factions together for me. And so I'm excited because this new one is going to have basically more fleshed out rules. There was a White Dwarf that came out a while ago that had rules for like, hey, here's how you can basically jam an Inquisitor in your army or form his little retinue, and it would be its own separate detachment. And I'm excited because it's just new, flavorful ways. They're not optimal. They're not amazing. They don't add much, frankly, to an army, but it is 100% a narrative thing that I wanted to do. And so that's it. And so it gives you, they have some new Inquisitor models coming out. I'm not the biggest fan of that head or the fact that she's using Eldar weapons, but I like everything else about the model. Because it looks like Sister of Battle armor that's been scrapped of all like religious iconography, and that's a very interesting thing. Let's see. So yeah, we got that, and it's basically you just add like a wizard to your army who brings some cool narrative stuff to it, and that's all I was looking for, to be perfectly honest with you. And it also gives you some cool modeling opportunities. I have enough bits from several Necromunda boxes to be able to make a really cool Inquisitor retinue for him. So that's one that I'm excited about, and you'll probably be seeing quite a bit of that. Next one. Oh yeah, this is the article that came up regarding 9th and 40k that I had just an honest question for people in the chat. So the article is about strategic reserves. In the game, there are a lot of ways to quote-unquote deep strike where you set up off the board and you come in. AOS has the same thing. In addition, any units in your army can go into strategic reserves where they basically walk onto the battlefield later. Now, this article goes through to say, units that have a deep strike equivalent rule will be able to do their things like normal. It's only the stuff that doesn't have that you would put into strategic reserves. My question to you, the chat, because I just wanted to get an understanding of is this an important thing about 9th? Were people using strategic reserves a lot before? Like things that didn't set up off table coded into their rules and you chose to do that. Was that happening a lot? Because I have no idea. Foul Mood Central asks, what Ordo would I pick then? Hereticus, for sure. We're looking for heretics. This is a religious thing. So I'll pause there and let you guys answer. I'm just curious as to, like, they made this thing about strategic reserves, and then I'm reading the article, and I'm like, why? Why would I do this? It costs CP now. If you already have those abilities, yeah, I don't know. So I'm just curious. Armies with stratagems for deep strike were very big. Oh, I see. So units that have it on their War Scroll or whatever aren't affected, but what people were doing was using those stratagems to bring units that didn't have it on their battle scroll. Is that accurate? Common to max out on the ones you could do. Interesting. It protects from alpha strikes and for shooting just like AOS. That's awesome. Okay, no, that's great. I'm really glad I asked, because it's one where I read it, and because I don't play enough, and I certainly don't play a lot of armies where I have the Grey Knights, and they can do it where you spend a command point and you put a unit up in the sky, basically. That I just didn't think about that, right? When I was playing orcs, all my orcs were on the table. When I was doing Death Watch, there just weren't enough bodies, basically. Okay, cool. Awesome. I'll look into that a bit more. That was my genuine question. And today's article is about Combat Patrol, which I'm so excited about. So Combat Patrol is the smallest form of 40k that they talked about in the new edition. It takes place on a kill team or Warcry board, because they're the same 40. I'm sorry, no, it's two of those boards put together, right? 44 and 30. So it's a long, narrow strip. And they have specific missions for it, which is fantastic. This one looks exactly like Battle for the Pass. That's 4 objectives. You're restricted to building your army on a patrol detachment, which is very nice because it tells you exactly what you can and cannot take. Basically, a hero and a troop. The power level for each side is about 25 power level, which is about 500 points. It's the smallest game size there is. And they give you a few lists based on some of the Indominus boxes that are coming out. I think it's weird that their examples were, okay, your big starter set, your flagship starter, which is great. As far as like having right out of the box combat patrol armies good to go. But then like their other examples are all based around start collecting boxes, which is very cool. And a few other purchases. But like the Gene Stealer Cult one just seems very random, and so does the Space Marines one, where you're just like, okay, cool. And then the Mechanicus is just legit. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's really cool to do those smaller games. I guess what I'm getting at, when we talk about things that we see in 40K that we want to have come over to AOS, I want this. Like, I want more restrictions and design placed on small games or games at different size levels, rather than just saying one hero, 2+ battle line. I want something more concrete to make those smaller games fun. And so, yeah, this is exactly what I was looking for. The fact that you can grab a start collecting box and have darn near a whole army. I mean, what if you were to buy... There's a few other things. The Gene Stealer Cult one is hard because they're so cheap points-wise and power level-wise. But, like, this is literally a Chaos Space Marine start collecting box. The Master of Possessions, 5 Chaos Space Marines, 2 Obliterators, and the Venom Crawler. That's a set. That's just out there. That's awesome. Like, question, can you go over your list tomorrow so I can build mine specifically to counter it? Absolutely. I'm playing a game with Jack for the first time in way too long tomorrow. Okay, and that's it for my news that I got. I really wanted to talk about scaling point size of games because that's really, really important to me. And ask that question about strategic reserves because I didn't get it when I first saw it. I'm gonna leave it here for a hot second. Does anyone have any other thoughts on the news or specifically the Lumineth Realm Lords? I'm very excited to get them. There were a few questions in the chat as far as how I'm gonna build them. I simply don't know enough. I want to get the battle tome. I want to digest it. And I want to do an army that I think really represents whatever part of the story I find most interesting. We saw the Lumineth Realm Lord preview about their lore and how, they basically were carbon copies of the elves of old, and to the point where their arrogance led them to disaster, and now whatever the Realm Lords are now is the fragments of that, or at least suffering the consequences of whatever they were doing before because of their arrogance. So I want something that really leans into like that narrative arc. So Ben asked, did you see the German leaks of the War Scrolls? I saw a few of them, but honestly, I'm just gonna wait. Like I saw the page that had the points. So it had the way that the units become battle line. If you don't know, to my understanding at this point, it's you take your basic spearman bro and they unlock a unit of horsey boys or some other unit as battle line, which is an interesting thing. It's a very interesting army construction concept that I like quite a bit. So I just want to read the rules before I decide anything. Also, like, we've only seen, I think, 2 or 3 of the sub factions, and if they have one that just hits the right narrative button in my brain, it's on. So I'm just gonna wait. So we're gonna move into kind of the main topic for tonight, and I am excited to share this. So basically, I was watching AOS Coach this last week, and he had Paul Conti on. Paul Conti of Radio Free Hammer Hall. I always want to say Hammer Free Radio Hall, but that's not it. Hammer Free Radio Hall. Radio Free Hammer Hall. There we go. And they were talking about Math Hammer. And I'm gonna pull it up here for you guys. But basically, yeah, if you go to AOS Coach and you look at his channel, is it the last video? Yes, it is the last video. It's simply called Making Smarter Gaming Decisions. And the idea was, how can we use MathHammer, my calculations of probability and that kind of stuff, to get to make better choices, right? That's simply what it was. And I was in this chat watching the show live, as was Jack from Rerolling Ones. He was being a huge troll and a turd. That's why we love him. Anyway, but me, I was trying to genuinely learn something. I put up a meme on my social media stuff about like how MathHammer just goes way over my head. And Paul Conti, who I'm friends with on Facebook, reached out and said like, basically, I'll have to teach you, but teach me how MathHammer works. And so that's why when I saw that this episode was on, I was like, oh, I absolutely want to learn, right? So I started watching it. And what they really did was kind of broke down, first of all, what is it, right? When we say MathHammer, what we're talking about is either statistical chances on a d6 or generally a 2d6, right? That's for charges and magic and all that kind of stuff. And I was listening to this, and in the chat, I was like, they did a great job. This is a great discussion that you should go watch. And if you have any further questions, I'm sure you can hit up Paul Conti or AOS Coach about it. But the central thing was they kept making sure that we understood, we were understanding what they were talking about. And it kind of reached a point where I was like, okay, I understand conceptually what MathHammer is. And it's not a very complicated thing. It's just some very specific, basic mathematics and that kind of stuff. But what I was missing was I don't see how this is fun, right? Like, how does MathHammer increase my enjoyment with my opponent? How do we have fun together? And I'm actually going to pull up the exact conversation that I had because somebody else in the chat totally nailed it. My comment in the chat was, to be perfectly honest, I think the real thing I want to know is, how does this enhance the fun I have in my games with my friends? Because everything that they were talking about was how to get optimum units, right? What's the most viable? That's not all they were talking about, but I mean, like, when I hear people talk about MathHammer, all I was hearing about was viability, and this is the best, and this is the worst. You get into that kind of like competitive mindset. And an answer came from a gentleman in the chat named Merrick Wolf. That's his YouTube name. And he says, it shows how to take those units you love and make them more effective, whether you're being competitive or not. And you know, that got my brain working quite a bit. I've never divorced MathHammer from competitive play, or understanding probability and mitigating risk. Discussions were always being had centered around that, but I don't play in that world, right? I build special snowflake armies, I take bad lists, and I have a good time. That's just me. And it occurred to me that before this, interaction in this video, applying MathHammer to units whose war scrolls leave a bit to be desired isn't something that I see, right? We're not using words like, OP, trash, optimal, viable. I don't really like any of those words. Take whatever you like and have fun. But simply put, I have no interest in MathHammer when it comes to winning games or making smart choices, but using those units that are somewhat disappointing and raising them to a point where they act like they do in the lore. And that to me is the biggest thing. And so what I wanted to do, just for a funsy thing, is I'm going to pick a unit that is generally regarded as a turd, and we're going to talk about ways to make it good, because there are a lot of ways to make bad units good. And when I say bad units, all I simply mean is they don't really capture what they do on the on the lore entry, what they do on the table. And so Cody Griffin, I see you're there with talking about Last of Us 2. No spoilers. I haven't played it yet. I don't know. So, let's see. It's not the case, everyone, but all the people I've had talking to me about have just been the absolute worst. Jacob, are you talking about Math Hammer, or are you talking about The Last of Us 2? Let's move away from that, just because I don't want to get it caught up. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to do. So we're going to go to the, let me move some models here. We'll go to the downward cam. Sorry, Sisters Repentia. Sucks to suck today. And I got some books. So the one that I wanted to focus on, and I will, actually we'll go back here until I can get it all set up. But the Beast of Nurgle. The Beast of Nurgle is quite possibly one of my favorite models. He looks dumpy, and I love him. Like, Jacob, Math Hammer. Yeah. No, I totally get it. I honestly, I try very hard not to make generalizations, and I also am with it enough to understand that, like, man, there's just a reason that a lot of folks have bad taste in their mouths about it. Again, I've never separated the idea of Math Hammer and narrative play. Like, those two had never come together. Beast of Nurgle, if you don't know, 5 inches of movement. He's killing it, zooming across that table. He's got a 5-up save. That's nothing to write home about, but 7 wounds. That's awesome. Disgusting Resilient is 5-up. Okay, so he gets a 5-up, 5-up. And for his attacks, Claws and Tentacles, D6 attacks. Randomness is not great for a lot of competitive folks. Hits on a 4, wounds on a 3. Slobbering Tongue, 2-inch range weapon, 1 attack, 3-up, 3-up, D3 damage. No rend anywhere. That sucks. Like, straight up. Let's see. Acid Slime Trail. Roll a dice for each enemy unit within 3 inches of this unit. Immediately before that unit makes a retreat move, on a 4-up, it suffers D3 wounds. So you... Before this unit... Okay, so yeah, if you fall back out of combat, you're going to do D3 wounds on a 4-up. This unit can charge in the same turn at which it ran or retreated. That is huge. And add 1 to the damage characteristic of this unit's weapons while it's within 7 inches of a demon hero. So, I wanted to talk about some of the ways where we can use Math Hammer and synergies and buffs and that kind of thing to get the most out of this, because it's a unit that I really want. So, that is when we'll come back to the downward cam. Sorry to blind you all twice. I had to get it out there. I forgot to cover the war scroll first. So yeah, we'll go here. The first thing I want to start by looking at is basically just counting all of the ways that we can get a unit to increase its performance, okay? So you have stuff like terrain features, allegiance abilities, hero buffs, battalions, sub-faction rules, which, you know, for Magakin of Nurgle specifically got added in Wrath of the Everchosen, so we'll come around to that eventually. And yeah, let's see. So we're taking our Beast of Nurgle, our humble little beast boy. And the first thing we need to talk about is the wheel. And the wheel is, if you are a Maggotkin player, the wheel is quite possibly one of the most important parts of your army. Because it dictates so much of the rules that you have at your disposal. Some things that generally stand out on the wheel, and you can manipulate this with other things in your list. So we have Unnatural Vitality, add 2 to the move characteristic. Any unit that can run and charge would love that. Then we have Fecund Vigor, adding to the wound rolls. He wounds on a 3 with both his weapons. Hitting is the bigger thing. We can ignore the terrain feature 1, ignore the battle shock 1 because he's a demon. Yeah, they're not going to run away a whole lot. Reroll wound rolls of 6 or more for enemies hitting him. So that could be good. That's a different type of defense. And the other ones are about healing and hurting other people. So there's some options there. Okay, there's some light ones. The movement one I think is definitely the best. And that's generally true for Maggotkin on the whole. Which actually is a good thing, because that means if you take Beasts of Nurgle and other stuff that is more, we'll say, generally effective, it is okay, because they are all benefiting from that as well. Now, and when you start moving inward, we got the lores. Where is this at? It's almost like I took a huge nap before coming on and totally forgot to prep anything. Oh yeah. I know what I wanted to show. There is... Where is it at? Artifacts. Yeah, so things like the wither stave and where is it at? Shield growth, hive, Nurgle. It was just here, wasn't it? Am I losing my mind? Rustfang, there we go. The Rustfang basically allows you to pick a enemy unit and they subtract 1 from its save rolls. That's functionally going to be your rend that you can give them. Again, things that are good always, so we're not like drawing resources away from something else to focus on Beasts of Nurgle, which is ultimately a good thing. We have our obligatory battalions here, and there is a battalion that uses these guys. It's just nuts. Nurgle's Menagerie. This is the thing that Jack from Rerolling Ones did. He tried to talk me out of it. So it's Horticulus Slimex, that little guy riding the slug, 3 units of Beasts of Nurgle, and 3 units chosen from, and then it's just the Plague Drones, Beasts, and Nurglings. So you could theoretically have just him and a massive ton of Beasts of Nurgle. Basically, you can plant a free tree every single turn, and you subtract 1 from the bravery of enemy units. So that's not great. The bravery one, not really, but the trees certainly are, because when you start racking up lots of contagion points faster and faster, you can spend those to do more summoning and that kind of thing. So that's an interesting one. It's one that I've never seen anyone use, and it definitely plays into my special snowflake syndrome. But I don't know. There's just something about it that I like. So that doesn't directly buff Beasts of Nurgle, but what it does do for them that is really important is if you want a list that is focused on them, it keeps your drop count low. The fact that you can have up to 6 units, right? Because you have to have 3 Beasts of Nurgle, but up to 3 units chosen in any form. So it could be a minimum of 3 Beasts of Nurgle, and then you do Nurglings or something else that's cheap. Or it could be a maximum of 3 different units. Of course, a unit being 1 to... How big can the units get? Beasts of Nurgle. Sometimes I just have no idea why they put these things in such weird orders. 6. It can be a max of 6. That's huge. Okay, now we're going to go look at Slimex. Remember, they are getting a bonus just for being near a hero. Where he is. Spiopox, Epidemius, Horticulus, here we go. Reroll failed charge rolls to hit rolls of 1 for friendly Beasts of Nurgle while they're within 7 inches. So, if we combine him with the Locus of Virulence, which is the thing that all Beasts of Nurgle have anyway, we have a situation where they are rerolling 1s to hit and charge. I believe it was hit, right? Hit rolls of 1 and charge rolls of 1, as well as +1 damage to all their weapons. So Slimex is a fantastic one. Also, he moves about as fast as they do, which is slow as all get out, but of course things like run and charge and speed bonuses from the wheel, that kind of stuff can all help. That's honestly about it from the battle tome, and that reasoning is, I think, why we don't see Beasts of Nurgle a lot. It takes work to get them to do pretty much anything at all. The random attack profile, yeah, rerolling 1s to hit is awesome, but it's also not amazing, right? Not when it's a 4-up to hit with the main attack. But things get a lot more interesting if we apply these same principles to a sub-faction. So, that's why we're going to talk about... Oh my god, it's the Wrath of the Everchosen. Okay. Probably should have, marked these pages out. This is a good learning moment. And I'm glad we're all here to share it. I don't look at this book enough. This is such a good book. The Flayed, Baleful Lords. Munificent Wanderers. So, Munificent Wanderers are a demon kind of focused faction. Let's see. I'm just checking the comments here. Prophet of Hashut, they will have an average of about 1.25 wounds to a unit as a 4-up save. Exactly, yes. We'll talk about the Math Hammer bit stuff here in a little bit, Cody here. Okay. So we got the Munificent Wanderers. Okay, I'm just making sure I'm not losing anybody in the chat. They gain a whole bunch of stuff. Locus of Corrosion. While an enemy unit is within 3 inches of any Munificent Wander demon units, which of course Beast of Nurgle would be, worsen the Ren characteristic of that unit's melee weapon by 1. So, Beasts of Nurgle have a 5-up save and a 5-up Disgusting Resilient. What you're just doing is making them more resilient, right? Taking away some rend. Every wound's going to matter in a Nurgle army, because most of these units are all about clogging up the enemy while you hold objectives. It's scenario play. It's a lot of it. Plus mortal wounds, depending on how you lean. So that's awesome. That is instant survivability. Army-wide. I love it. And then you get into the command stuff, and it's really, really interesting. So the command ability. You can use this command ability in your hero phase. If you do so, pick a Wanderer's Demon unit, wholly within 14 inches of one of these heroes with a command ability until the start of your next phase. If an enemy unit ends a charge within 3 inches of that unit, that enemy suffers D3 mortal wounds. Now, what this immediately makes me want to do, to be honest with you, is take the battalion from before and have that, fill it with dudes and make a wall, a meat wall of Beasts of Nurgle. Because at this point we're increasing, bit by bit, their survivability and push that forward. Find some way, I'm sorry, I'm knocking models around. Find a way to push them so far forward, like say a Greed Unclean one with a bell can give them an increase in speed. Throw them up there and let your opponent chew into them. They're not going to be melee masters, but they can be a speed wall that is annoying as all get out to go through. In addition to that, the command trait is if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a melee weapon that targets a demon unit wholly within 12 inches of this general is 6, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So, this gives you a choice. You could lean into this and say, you know, okay, if you hit me with a 6, you take a mortal wound back at you, which is awesome. Or you can go the other route. There's an artifact that forces them to re-roll successful hit rolls of 6. So you could, you know, kind of lean into keeping them alive, which would be fantastic. Or you could lean into this, which is hurting, like making your meat wall hurt the enemy as it goes. And then they have a pretty mediocre, pick one of the bear's melee weapons, add 1 to hit rolls. It's whatever, it's an artifact, it doesn't matter. But the thing is, if you're taking a battalion, you can take this, and then you have the ability, because you have a battalion, to buy a second artifact, and you could do something like Rustfang, where all of a sudden now it's doubling up Ren characteristic and survivability and those kinds of things. I absolutely I love it. Now, is this thing that we're concocting here? I'm not going to actually build a list because I don't have these things. But what I'm saying is, there are ways, if you are really interested in a single unit, looking through the book to be like, how can I get the most out of this? And that's something I just don't think we do enough of. We talk about things being good, bad, trash, OP, broken, whatever words you want to use. I don't like the word viable because it makes it sound like it's, I don't know, a genetic test or something. But what I'm talking about is the idea of taking time to look at a unit and saying, what is everything that makes this unit great? And for some armies, it's much easier than others. For example, in these buffs that we're talking about here for the Beast of Nurgle, are pretty tame, right? It's just there's a couple reroll places, there's army-wide speed bonuses because of the wheel, that kind of stuff. But when you get into units like, say, some of the corn ones, where their stats are even more garbage, but then when you layer on, the Blood Secretor, the guy with the whip, all of a sudden they ramp up. There's a lot more moving parts into that faction than there is with this one. And so I like that quite a bit, that there's different versatility in what buffs, or how many buffs it takes a unit to do well. What I can tell you from playing the Puscoil Blightlords, which are the big fat flyboys, I would do the exact same thing I do with them, which is just you get a big unit of them and you throw them as far forward as you humanly can into your opponent's face, and you just let them chew on that while your Blight Kings and your Plague Bearers and that kind of stuff go hop on objectives, and you just chill. Like profit. So that's an instance where you're looking at this stuff like, okay, Chaboy in the chat did the math hammer and find that we're not doing a whole lot of wounds with these guys. So let's not worry about the buffs that affect their damage output. Let's focus on the buffs that affect their movement. Why? Because... Or keep them alive, rather, because we can throw them at the enemy and just let them chew on it, while everything else is focused on doing damage or catching objectives, that kind of stuff. That's what I'm talking about when I say let's focus on this. And this is not a fleshed out concept. Like I said before, this is just something that was working in the background of my brain after hearing that discussion. I'll be honest, I don't like Math Hammer when it comes to matched play. I'm going to say matched play and not competitive play, because I don't like that some units are completely overlooked. What someone else thinks is the coolest frickin' model they've ever seen, they want to play with a bunch of it. And then they're mathematically terrible, right? You see people online, instead of saying like, this is my opinion, or nope, they say this unit is garbage. That's crappy. Let's not do that anymore. Instead, how can we build really cool lists centered around models that we just don't see enough? And that's what I would like to see. And so if you are watching this later, I would love to know, or if you're in the chat right now, what is a unit that is generally considered bad that you love? And let's talk about how can we make that unit better. My patrons chimed in with a whole bunch of things. Let me actually want to pull up their suggestions here, because there was a whole... surprisingly, most of the suggestions that came at me for units came from the Nighthaunt book, which was just like super funny. I guess. I mean, I didn't ever play the Nighthaunt. I was kind of. Let's see. Where is it at? Posts. I'm just looking up what other ones have been out there. Published. Fiends of Slanesh, same thing. Which, I mean, Fiends and the Beasts of Nurgle, they're actually kind of identical in terms of, how they fit into the army, being like a chunkier, larger single model, or, obviously pairs, whatever, they can be in units. But I mean, in terms of that same thing. Dreadscythe Harridans, Cygor or Gorgon, any of the Warcry warbands in terms of making them work. I will say the beasts, Untamed Beasts are dope. In Slaves to Darkness, because of their, if you get a max unit of them and just do their scout move in the beginning, you can put some real board presence out there. Savage Boar Boys from Chaos Spawn, he's in the chat too. Yeah, so there's just skull cannons, someone said. I call them glitter guns. That's awesome, Michael Hammond. Squig Herd, Skaven Acolytes. He said Skaven Acolytes mainly because the models themselves cost the king ransom. Yeah, that's fair. You got to make your own, bro. So, yeah, I don't know. It's one... Cody says in the chat, I honestly can't help on this topic because I couldn't tell if you want a unit... I couldn't tell you if a unit truly sucks or not. I just want it. Well, that's what we're talking about, is the idea of... I don't want there to be a discussion where... competitive and narrative are on polar opposite sides, and they talk about math over here and how to make things the best, and over here On the narrative side, it's just like, well, you take dumpy bad lists because that's the story. And both of those things can be true. If you want to win an event, you should know the probabilities behind what you do. And also, if you want to play a narrative game, it shouldn't matter what you take. But Doug and 2+ Stuff falls somewhere in the middle where it's like, how do we take the things that we love and do the best that we can with them? Because playing the best game you can with what you love and giving your opponent a chance to do the same, I think that's the perfect place, right? I mean, I trade armies like I'm a competitive player where I get a lot of exposure to a bunch of different rules, except I don't base getting rid of an army on they're no longer king of the meta. And at the narrative end, I just like units that tend to be not so great. And so let's put those in the middle and just find ways to use what we like. I did the same thing with my Pusquo Blight Lords. I'm looking at the model, and I'm like, I like these guys. It's a Blight King strapped to a Plague Drone. I love it. The lore for them is sick and awesome. And it wasn't until, well, it was actually Wrath of the Everchosen with the Drowned Men, I believe I used. They both really benefit these guys. But yeah, there was the Drowned Men that fit my aesthetics and also allow me basically to get into combat like really, really quickly. Reroll charge rolls for friendly Drowned Men Pusquo Blight Lords while they're wholly within 14 of the general. And so it basically just fit into my scheme. And I'm doing the exact same thing with them that I talked about doing with the Beasts of Chaos, which is these guys. I have 3 units of them, and then a whatever the hero version is. And I just launch them dead at my opponent as fast as I possibly can to tie down their army while everything else scrambles and gets objectives. The rest of the army, the other 1,500 points of my 2,000 point army is centered around just playing the game. Whereas that 500 points for, again, it's been a while since I played AOS because of COVID, but like that 500 to 600 point block of all the Drowned Men stuff, the Pusquo Blight Lords and their hero is all centered around keeping my opponent off the table, but they will die, and that's fun. It's not like a 40 block of skeletons that's no fun to chew through. These guys are super fun to kill. And then the opponent has to try and catch up, and there's a lot of drama that it creates because I'm taking things that aren't optimal. I understand. And Paul mentions this a few times on his channel, Radio Free Hammerhall, that the Blessed Sons is probably the better way to go because they have a heavy emphasis on Blight Kings, which are probably the stronger unit choice. But I chose the worst thing, and I love it. It was a good choice. So I wanna move back here to focus on me, and we'll just kind of open it up. What are y'all's thoughts on that? Like, I know it's not groundbreaking stuff, but I've just never heard of Math Hammer in any context other than power gaming, right? But I would like to move away from that. I want to know, because we hear about ways like, here's this sick combo of Ossiarch Bone Reapers, and you're stacking all these buffs, and the same thing with Slanesh. Flesh Eater Corpse was the big one that did that, where they're like, hey, here's how these things work together, and then your Terror Geist just eats everything, that kind of stuff. But what I'd like to hear more discussion on is, here's how we make units fun and awesome, right? And we just don't hear enough of it. That's kind of the whole point of this segment, is just saying, play whatever you want, and how can we make that the most fun experience? And when I say fun experience, I mean that you give your opponent a good game, right? Like, both of you have an actively fun time for the 2 to 3 hours that you're playing. And that's where it gets interesting, because some things just aren't fun. I've made this saying before, like, I don't like playing Legions of Nagash or against them because I don't like 40-man blocks of skeletons. I find them very boring to chew through. However, huge maxed out blocks of zombies are so fun, no matter how many times they come back, because you're just constantly pulling models off, things are dying. It feels like things are happening. And so that's kind of the thing I want to get at, where it's like, you can take the suboptimal thing and have more fun. And I love it. But we just got to find ways to make that really, really interesting and compelling on the tabletop. Spezia says, yeah, I use Math Hammer to make narrative stuff playable. Like, if I go 0-5, but I had a great time, then go 5-0, and I just want to crush everything. Yeah, exactly. So you can have a great time no matter what, whether you're winning or not. But what I like is that there is this weird aspect of taking these suboptimal units that are buffed up in really strange and unique ways that makes them, first of all, a very good narrative army, something you don't see every day, very special snowflakey, which is kind of my style. But in addition to that, when you bring those kinds of units to an event, you are posing a new question that your opponents may not have seen before. I highly doubt if you were to take this Beast of Nurgle thing that we just came up with, right, or the pieces of it anyway, and made a battalion where every single turn you're getting a free tree on top of the trees that you're buying. You're now summoning as much as you humanly can in Nurgle. You have a big wall of beef that goes and hops on objectives, the Beast of Nurgle, with all the buffs that make them hard to kill, not necessarily the ones that make them more killy. You are now posing a unique question to your opponent, and if they don't know anything about Beasts of Nurgle because everyone on the internet has just said they're terrible, you're not going to auto-lose. I highly doubt you would go 0-5 with that list, simply because you can do things that they were not expecting. And so I think that's really awesome. Joseph says, one Goblin War Boss on Giant Cave Squig, followed by 1,800 points of Boingrot Bounders. I don't know enough about their buffs and synergies and what that would look like, but that sounds nuts. A unit that I would use that people say sucks or aren't viable is the Varen Guard. I've had really good runs with them. With Demon Blades, Mark Slanesh. Great if they kill or die, always fun. Varen Guard are legit. There was some stuff in there from Wrath of the Everchosen that had Varen Guard being a little more interesting. And obviously their Battle Tome too. I'm very interested in them, for sure. There's some cool things going on there. Jacob says, that's essentially the crux of it for me. Math Hammer has always been a very power gamey thing, but I really like this idea you've been discussing, Doug. Maybe the way to make units live up to the lore hype. Yes, and that's exactly the point. Where we look at some of these, I'll say there's a difference between monsters who have like the sliding scale of effectiveness based on how many wounds they have. That's kind of a different thing that we can talk about in its own episode. But the idea of these kind of like smaller units that they just don't quite do what they say they do in the lore and you want them to, there are typically ways that you can make them do that. And one of those is listing out, just like if you were a power gamer trying to find the optimal units and that kind of stuff, list out all the bonuses, all the interactions, all the buffs, and then choose a path for them. I think there's absolutely a lot of units that can do that. It's not going to win you a tournament, but you can have an amazing time, and you can be, I think Jack calls it a spoiler army, where you go there asking a question that your opponents are not ready for, and so maybe you don't win, but you knock the guy who was gonna win off his, off the first place mantle, and now something else that's new and unique wins. So it's a very interesting idea where it's like you can come counter to conventional wisdom, and all of a sudden you're asking different questions that they can't answer. I love it. That's just like the heart of it for me. Let's see. So that's all that I really had for a topic today. I just want to talk about that. It was just a very, very compelling conversation. Not about Math Hammer, because honestly, math bores the snot out of me. But more about when... what was their name again? Let me see. When Merrick Wolf responded, right, it shows you how to make those units you love and use them more effectively, whether they're a competitive choice or not. For some reason, that response was the best response I've ever had in a chat, and it wasn't even on one of my shows. Sorry, guys. It was just, and when I say best response, I simply mean it turned my perspective. Like, usually when we do social media interactions, that kind of stuff, we don't really like change our minds. That's why debating on Facebook is dumb and it exists for memes for me. But that's one example where I'm like, that's a really good point. I had nothing else. So I really, really enjoyed that quite a bit. And it got me thinking about some units that, what are the armies that I've traded away because I couldn't get the units that I liked to do what I thought they should do, right? And I'm thinking about basically all the armies that I've given to Jack over the years, right? You have Bone Splitters, Iron Jaws, Fire Slayers, What else? What else have I sold to Jack? Other things of that ilk. KO, but then I got the KO back. I don't know, but I'm just thinking about all these armies that I've had where I'm like, how many opportunities did I miss just because I didn't do the quote unquote power gamery thing of just finding what works and using it, because I was like, no, this is narrative. It's crappy, but I'm going to play it because I like it. But I didn't take the time to do the work to be like, no, it doesn't have to be crappy. This could be really fun. This could be really cool. And so that was kind of my crux there. I am going to be doing that for the Maggotkin. I don't know how much further I want to go with the Maggotkin of Nurgle project. I have the models for the kinds of lists that I want. I like an emphasis on mortals more than anything else. So I have the army that I want for it. I'm not sure how much work I'm going to do, but certainly when it comes to the Lumineth Realm Lords, because there is this nice gap of time between when the book comes out, like my pre-order is already in the mail, and when the rest of the army comes out, because again, they're just releasing the Lumineth box set right now, that I have plenty of time to be like, okay, what's not great, right? What is, Warhammer Weekly and The Honest Wargamer, pick your competitive meta talking head of choice. What are they going to say that sucks that I'm like, that's a cool frickin' model and I want to use it? And so how could I make that awesome, right? Because I'm a special snowflake. And I don't know, I have that need in my brain. So that's definitely going to be my mindset when it comes to building and painting up the Lumineth Realm Lords, is like, how can I take the model that... I mean, I'm one of those people, I'm a contrarian in some level. They're all going to find the model that's the worst in the book, and I'm going to be like, oh, they say it's the worst, huh? I should probably play that. And that's exactly how my brain works. So I'm going to take that, and I'm going to turn it into a whole flippin' army. And we're going to see. And then, because it's fun, when I started thinking about looking at other armies, this is actually a fun experiment for y'all. Looking at other armies that you don't play, maybe you have no interest in playing, but picking one model, you're like, man, if I could have a whole army where that X model is like, it's the center focus of it, how cool would that be? For example, like Deepkin. I have no interest in playing Deepkin Eels. Like, I just don't. I don't know why. I saw the models. They're not my favorite. I like the infantry dudes. When I get the Lumineth, I'm probably going to add some Deepkin allies because I like the narrative tension between those two forces. They're awkward half-brothers. They got the same dad, different mom. But there's just stuff where I'm like, you know what? If I could have a Deepkin army based around the sharks, yeah. Like, I love the shark. I think this is the coolest freaking model. But you just don't see it a whole lot. And that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, okay, well, now with this new mindset, I'm looking at this being like, how can we make that shark awesome? I love it. Got a question from Spezia. Doug, do you know that you look a ton like the host from The Floor is Lava? I have never... What is The Floor is Lava? Every single time somebody says, you look like this person, it's always like super insulting. So let's see if we can find this person. I'm not seeing a lot of faces. I'm just seeing a lot of channels. Turtle and Big Cow. Yes. Nah, sorry, I'm not finding it. I don't know who that is. But, yeah. That was my thoughts for the day. I just wanted to chime in there a little bit. It was a cool discussion. You should definitely go check out. I'll try to remember to leave the link once this video finishes processing about that video for AOS Coach, Making Smarter Gaming Decisions. And you can go follow the chat. You can go see me try to learn and understand why all this matters, and you can of course go see Jack from Rolling Ones be an absolute turd in the chat. It's good. They're all friends. We're all friends. I'd love to see the turtle and big cow combo. Oh yeah, dude, you just take the helmet off of the bull guys with the ridiculous helmet and put those horns on the turtle. Seamless transition. But yeah, so I'm excited. I'm excited about the new direction I'm going to be looking at armies going forward. To Jack's point that he wanted to know what I'm taking to power game against me, I am bringing the standard Magakin list for me now, which is 3 units of Puscoil Blight Lords and some other characters to hop on objectives. I actually have about 200 points of leeway in that list where I was like, I should get some other stuff. But yeah. He has black hair, a beard, and glasses. It's not an insult. Well, thank you. About picking a model you like. I play Fire Slayers. Lucky I love that model. Yeah, the singular model that is the Fire Slayer, and you get to have 60 of them. Solid choice. I love it. So, Rutledge Wood. Let's see. Bum, 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 bum. Oh, I see that. Yeah. Oh, screen share. Rutledge Wood. I could see that. I dig his shirt choices. I'm in the middle of losing some weight, so, yeah. Oh, I want to wear this suit. I don't know who this guy is, but I love him. Okay, at this point, we have jumped the Idnith Deepkin shark monster here. Hey Doug, I wanted to ask you about which core book I should pick up for AOS. Which core book? Let me see. Yeah. So, wrong camera. This here is the core book. Has the lady on the front. Yeah, that's all there is to it. I'm not sure which if you found a copy of the old one, but there's some really good lore and art in here and that kind of stuff. Don't necessarily get it for the rules because the rules constitute about 13 of these huge pages. But yeah, that's the one you're looking for. Anyway, friends, thank you all so much for hanging out with me. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here, but. If you have any questions or thoughts about this or your unit that you would like to see or to find ways to make it more fun and interesting, leave in the comments down below. I'd love to chat about it. Thank you all so much, and I'll catch you next week. Hopefully a little more structured, a little more organized for these because I won't have a doctor's appointment in the morning and have to be like in a rush. So anyway, I will see you all soon. Stay classy and happy wargaming, friends.